Hi, fancy folks. Welcome back to LuxeSci, where we make science a little less intimidating and a little more luxurious by exploring the intersection of science and luxury. I'm your host, Dr. Lex, global health consultant, survivor of way too much flow cytometry in grad school, and lover of all things fashion. This will be the second throwback episode to a previous season that we've done, and that's because I couldn't resist reintroducing this topic. Lately, my Instagram feed has been filled with all of the amazing looks from this year's Met Gala. One look that was impossible to escape was Cardi B's enormous black gown, said to evoke an unfurling rose and designed by an up-and-coming fashion label, Zen. What was also impossible to escape was the enormous emeralds in her necklace and earrings. Designed by the Indian jewelry house Kamyen, the necklace featured a 141-carat Colombian emerald. The earrings also featured large emeralds as well as yellow and white diamonds. The overall look was striking. Because of this recent fashion statement, and because the birthstone for May is the emerald, I thought we would revisit our episode on emeralds from Season 1. It also features our co-host, Dr. Dimos, which is always a good time. But let's have some additional background before we dive into that previous episode. As a reminder, emeralds are beryls. Beryls are minerals made up of beryllium aluminum silicate. They are largely found in hexagonal crystals. Pure beryl is colorless, but it can be tinted by impurities, which is why we have emeralds and aquamarines and other colored beryls. The word beryl is from the ancient Greek berylos, which means precious blue-green color of the sea water stone. Fun fact though, the first eyeglasses constructed in 13th century Italy used beryl for the lenses because glass was not clear enough at the time. Beryl is widely distributed around the world and is usually found in granitic pegmatites and limestone. Pegmatite forms when magma cools, leaving some elements behind in the remaining fluid. Emerald crystals can grow in the pegmatite when the remaining solution cools as long as the necessary elements are present, including beryllium. Beryl crystals incorporate silicate tetrahedral rings in a structure that forms channels in the mineral. And this is important because the channels allow other molecules to be incorporated into the crystal. This disrupts the charge of the crystal, allowing for further substitutions of the molecules that can give the crystal a color. For emeralds, their color comes from chromium, vanadium, and iron present in the beryl. Chromium and vanadium make an intense green, while iron gives a bluish tint. And so various combination of the three impurities give you the various different green colors that you can see in the emeralds. So that's a little background on beryls and emeralds. I hope you enjoy this throwback episode, and if you do, please share it. Also, since it's an older episode, references at the end may not still be active. We are still all over social media at LuxeSci Pod, so please drop us a line and say hello. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time. So this episode, we're exploring the epitome of green gemstones, the emerald. Now, I personally wondered how emeralds are different from other stones like a sapphire. Dimos, is there something you wondered about before you started your research?
I always wondered, what can you do with emerald besides look at it and be amazed by its beautiful color and clarity?
So we'll try to answer both of those questions. Originally, I had thought we were doing sapphires for this episode, and I even posted on our social media about it and started my notes. And then Dimos reminded me that per our schedule, we're doing emeralds, which makes sense because emeralds are the birthstones for May. Those lucky maybes. I don't have any personal anecdotes or experience with emeralds, but they are beautiful. So here's what two non-geologist PhDs found out about emeralds.
All right. Emerald's lush green, soothing color is something that has been around for a very long time. The ancient Greeks called it smaragdos, which is another word for essentially describing the color of emeralds.
I thought green was Prussian, though.
Prussian, yeah, but we're talking about ancient Greek now.
Oh.
Rome's Pliny the Elder described the emerald in natural history in the 1st century AD, calling it the nothing greens greener as his verdict. He described the use of emerald in early lapidaries who have no better method of restoring their eyes than looking at an emerald. It's soft green colored, comforting and removing weariness and lassitude. I'd love to get rid of some lassitude. Even today, the color green is known to relieve stress and eye strain.
So instead of all those blue light glasses, we should just get emerald Emerald-colored glasses instead of rose-colored glasses.
If we could look through emeralds all day,
yeah,
it could be very helpful. There are other green gems, tourmaline, peridot, but emerald is the one which is always associated with the luscious landscapes and the richest greens. Ireland is Emerald Isle. Seattle, in the U.S. state of Washington, is the Emerald City. Thailand's religious icon is called the Emerald Buddha, even though it's carved from green jadeite. The first known emerald mines were in Egypt, dating from at least 330 BC into the 1700s. Cleopatra was known to have a passion for emerald and used it in her royal adornments. Emeralds from what is now Colombia were part of the plunder when 16th century Spanish explorers invaded the New World. The Incas had already been using emeralds in their jewelry and religious ceremonies for 500 years. And the Spanish, who loved gold and silver far more than gems, traded emeralds for precious metals.
Yeah, I was just going to say, isn't that the irony? Like they came here looking for gold and didn't find gold mines and then just ignored all the gemstones that are in, Brazil and Colombia.
Yeah, all the truly priceless stuff.
So what is emerald?
Well, it's a member of the beryl family. Legends endowed the wearer with the ability to foresee the future when emerald was placed under the tongue, as well as to reveal truth and be protected against all evil spells. Emerald was once also believed to cure diseases like cholera and malaria.
Yeah, well, that's certainly not true. What did they do? Would they crush it up and try to drink it?
In fact, yes, that is one option.
That seems like a bad idea.
But, let's get back to that, because you can also crush emerald, put it in water, and under pressure make new emeralds.
Interesting. All right, so what else about emerald's formation?
So there's some facts, first of all. Beryl alumina silicon oxide.
Okay. What makes it green?
So what makes it green is how it refracts and collects light. So white light enters the emerald, but the resonance of the emerald crystal structure reflects back only green, and does so efficiently that all the other colors are essentially absorbed, except for that one.
So it's not a particular, it's not the aluminum in the beryl that makes it green. Like diamonds are different colors based on different impurities.
In this case, we're dealing with a pretty solid lattice, which is well defined. So it's not like a dopant. It's truly this beryl, or beryllium is another way that we see beryl in like metal. When it's in metal, we call it beryllium. On its own, beryl is actually quite toxic, but in its crystal form is definitely not toxic.
But please still don't go around licking people's emeralds.
No. But you definitely won't have any problems if you do. In 1960s, a method called hydrothermal flux synthesis, which is a great name for anything, was applied to emerald creation. Right now, it's the way that synthetic emeralds are created. The technique involves dissolving crystal nutrients and essentially shaved emerald in an acidic solution of water, and high temperature and pressure, along with the other elements of emerald like alumina and silicon. And water is brought up to an amazingly high temperature and pressure. One of the things that you might know is that if you pressurize water, you can raise the boiling point. In fact, nuclear reactors, for example, have liquid water, even though the water is at 900 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's also why you can steam clean things in autoclaves at much higher temperatures.
Exactly. Imagine taking that pressure up a few more notches beyond what even a nuclear power plant would do. And that's what it takes to make emerald. So imagine water being liquid at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit.
Is this used to make other synthetic gemstones, or is it just for the emerald?
I believe it's used for other synthetic gemstones. The technology for that is something I did not research for this podcast.
Just curious.
So the situation with the water is around 800 psi, so pounds per square inch, and 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry, we're not in SI units now, but it's about the same in Celsius.
I think that most people listening would probably it would be more relevant to them in Fahrenheit.
This is not that far from glass making.
That makes sense if you think about it.
But imagine now water as your main solvent for glass making. It kind of helps you reimagine how crazy water is as a molecule. So anyway, the molecules, the environment reaches an equilibrium, and the molecular destasis process begins. And I guess destasis means instability. Molecules of the nutrient are stripped away and attracted to and reform on the larger, more solid emerald seed. A lot of things are grown using seeds. You can take silicon, for example, and grow silicon transistors and the computer chips off of a single silicon seed.
I think what is interesting about that is that many people opt for synthetic gemstones as a more ethical choice for purchasing fine jewelry, since the provenance of gemstones is still something that's very controversial, as is much of the mining practices that yield those gemstones. But if you're starting with an emerald anyway, then how ethical are these synthetic ones?
Well, you could say this. It is possible to mine anything both in a sustainable manner and in an unsustainable manner. So if you can trace how the mining has occurred and how well and where it came from, you can then capture quality material in a good way from the earth, and from that use tiny bits and pieces of that material, for example leftovers from the grinding process, and then put it into this method, this hydrothermal environment, and create new emeralds.
So does the starting material have to be high quality to get a high quality emerald out of it?
Actually, I don't believe it would, and here's why. At this high temperature, the emerald's crystal structure is going to essentially form on its own if you have the proper quantities of the chemicals in place. So essentially, if there's even a tiny amount of the proper crystal structure available in this hydrothermal environment, you're going to form around that. And everything else will essentially kind of form something that's a lot more unstable, mechanically, materially unstable. You'll essentially create one emerald piece and then a lot of offshoots that might be a little bit off.
Is there a way to control sort of the size and the shape of the emerald that you make, or is it just up to the system?
So what'll happen is the emerald will grow in bulk at its own, and then from there it can be cleaved and then shaped into, let's say, a jewelry type of emerald, or shaped into another type that might be useful for a different application. The crystals themselves grow very slowly, and so it does take a very long time, 0.15 millimeters a day. There you go, there's some SI units. So a large crystal can take a long time to form. You know, a lot of crystals are 9-10 millimeters for standard jewelry. So you can imagine you would need 10 days to get roughly, say, 7 or 8 days to get a millimeter. So you would need 10 times that. So you'd need a couple of months just to get one single crystal and maintain that heat and that pressure. So it's a lot. It's a lot going on there.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So in any case, in 2000, by the year 2000, synthetic emerald was up to 600,000 carats a year.
It's a lot of emerald.
So a lot of emerald, a lot of interest in it, and there are quite a few companies now that make it. One company that's well known is Kyocera. It does a lot of glass and a lot of other technical silicon oxide and other materials for the semiconductor industry. Lind is another one. They're a European company. It's also known for glassware and scientific glassware.
It makes sense. They have all the same equipment, right?
Yeah. So some fascinating companies that are involved in that, and that's mine. But again, to tell you the truth, not really a lot on the industrial use of emerald. It is an extremely hard material. Diamond, it's on the lines of diamond. I could see maybe some future uses where you could, for example, help to strengthen ceramics by doping them with emerald, the way we zirconia dope standard alumina ceramics for improved strength.
Right. I mean, it's interesting. I found something similar when I looked. There wasn't a lot of biomedical use for emerald, and I didn't see anything that really explained why that was the case. You know, it's a different type of mineral than a diamond or a sapphire, which we'll talk about next time. But I didn't see a big glaring, don't use emerald because of this thing. So I have something a little bit different for my part of the episode. Usually I go to PubMed, which is the National Library of Medical Science from the NIH. It's their website that is a catalog of all of the medical publications ever, probably. They're pretty extensive. And I go there and look at our luxury item of choice and how it's used in biomedical research, and because that's where I feel the most comfortable scientifically, trying to explain things. And as I mentioned, it didn't really work this time. There aren't a lot of biomedical applications for emeralds. I found a lot about a species of bug, and there's an emerald moth, and there's been clinical trials that used emerald as an acronym for things. And like I said, it would be interesting to delve into why that is, but I think for the sake of the podcast and its length, we won't. What I did find is from the Gemological Institute of America. According to their website, the GIA was established in 1931 to provide knowledge, standards, and education in gem and jewelry. They work with diamonds, colored stones, and pearls, and also do research. I follow them on Instagram. Highly recommend. They are a perfect combo of pretty shiny things and science, and they recently posted about some fossilized shells that they received for analysis. So their Hong Kong lab received 11 fossilized shells that were encased in, guess what?
Emerald.
Yes.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Amazing.
Well, that's what it looked like at first. So they put the fossils under a microscope and saw numerous small light green to green anhedral emerald crystals containing very fine fluid inclusions associated with well-formed brassy pyrite grains. And as a reminder, inclusions are
Defects in a crystal or in a lattice.
Yeah, essentially, they're any material that is trapped in the mineral during formation. And these inclusions are indicative of Colombian emeralds. Colombia is a very big emerald exporter. So they performed X-ray radiography. And essentially that's just an X-ray like you get at the doctor's office. But interestingly, the X-ray is the radiation that's kind of beamed into you. The radiography is actually the picture that's produced from it. So we all say we're getting an X-ray, but really you're getting a radiogram. So
like a telegram.
Yeah, X-ray beam is passed through a specimen. The X-rays are absorbed or scattered by the internal structure of the specimen, in this case the fossil, and then the remaining X-rays are transmitted to the detector, which makes a pattern that can be visualized. And what they found is that they could see the spiral pattern of the shell with the emerald crystals evenly distributed, which indicated that the mineral had completely replaced the shell material. There's no shell left. It's basically just...
It's the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
A shell converted into emerald.
Apparently this happens with garnet, which we've covered before as well. And so to look into this further, they sent the specimens to the Laboratoire Français de Gemologie in Paris to submit to do X-ray tomography, which is a little bit different. It's essentially a CT scan of the shells, which will produce cross-sectional images. Origin of the word tomography is Greek. Do you know?
Yes. Tomos is body.
Slice.
Or slice. Oh, slice like feta.
Yes, like feta. But it's not, it's kind of hard to say photography.
Photography.
So
tomography.
Tomos is slice and
Feta was taken.
graphy as drawing, so slice drawing. They found no remains of the original shell, indications that the crystals had grown from the solid parts of the animal out to the shell and then inside to the hollow parts of the animal. And the scientists hypothesized that the shell was replaced gradually by many small crystals that later coalesced into a single crystal by a process known as Ostwald ripening. And that's the dissolution of small crystals and the redeposition of the crystal species on the surfaces of larger crystals, which might be what's happening when they're doing the synthetic emerald in the labs.
This reminds me a lot of the basis for the series The Expanse, because there's that woman who turns into a crystal, and she grows into, like, her body converts into a crystal form.
Maybe.
So she was having Ostwald ripening.
Right. Well, you know what else has Ostwald ripening? Ice cream.
Oh my goodness.
When you leave ice cream in the fridge too long and it gets kind of like crystalline and chunky. That's Oswald ripening.
Crystalline and chunky.
This is a thermodynamically driven spontaneous process that occurs because larger particles are more energetically favored than smaller particles. So in ice cream, you get larger ice crystals grow at the expense of smaller ones, giving that coarser texture. And another gastronomical example is the ouzo effect. Where the drop, so you know what happens when you put an ice cube in ouzo?
Turns white.
Yes. And the droplets in the cloudy microemulsion grow by Oswald ripening. And this only happens with anise-flavored alcohols. And it's an interesting emulsion that forms and is highly stable. You can drink a whole glass of ouzo and it won't separate the emulsion, because it is an emulsion.
Yeah.
Usually in emulsion you think salad dressing, right?
Yeah.
And you can shake it, and then, 30 seconds later it's apart again.
Unless you add mustard.
Right, unless you add a surfactant.
But you don't need a surfactant in this case.
You don't.
Yeah, we get some ouzo right now.
After the podcast.
Okay.
So this happens when a highly hydrophobic or afraid of water oil such as anethol, which is the flavoring I think that you get in the anise, is dissolved in a water miscible solvent like ethanol, and that is a solvent that can fully mix with water. So if you put water in your alcohol, you don't see any sort of emulsions or anything like that.
Yeah, like water and whiskey.
Yeah. And normally this isn't stable, like in salad dressing, because the oil droplets coalesce back together because they're hydrophobic, so they all want to be together. In ouzo, the droplet coalescence is slowed, and some scientists use microscopy to show that the droplets actually grow by Oswald ripening and not by coalescence. Wow. And it's a very subtle physics difference, but apparently accounts for the reason why you get that really cool effect when you drop an ice cube in a glass of ouzo, and why it stays that way while you drink the whole glass.
So cool.
Yeah, I'll leave it there in case you want to do an episode on the science of ouzo later in the podcast series.
Thank you. Stole all my thunder.
Why? You had that? Oh, you had the Oswald ripening as well?
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you remember what X-ray tomography is?
Yes. Thanks to your adept explanation, it's slice drawing.
Or a CT scan, essentially.
Yes.
Cross-sectional imaging.
Cross-sectional imaging using X-rays.
X-rays, right. So it's the same concept where the X-rays interact with, molecules in the specimen, and they either get absorbed or scattered in different patterns, and then that's projected onto the detector for imaging. And then we just did this Oswald ripening. What's that?
Oswald ripening is the growth of larger energetic crystals inside of a medium, because the larger crystals are more preferred in nature.
Close. Dissolution of small crystals and the redeposition on surfaces of larger crystals.
That sounds better.
Well, I mean, scientific definition and all. All right. And what is Oswald ripening responsible for that you like to drink?
Ouzo makes ouzo white.
Well, when you add the water, right?
And ice cream makes it chunky and not so pleasant.
Right. Another reason not to leave it. Well, ice cream never lasts too long in our freezer.
Well, I've got some I need to eat tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can have some.
I don't think I like that flavor.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you again for listening to this episode of LuxeSci. Please follow us on all of our social media, especially this week. We're going to add some pictures of emeralds and maybe the fossilized shells again. And
maybe Seattle, the Emerald City.
Maybe Seattle, the Emerald City, yeah. You can find us on social media at LuxeSci Pod. Please like and review wherever you subscribe to podcasts. A big thank you to my co-host and audio engineer, Dimos. Our theme music is Harlequin Mood by Burdy. And as always, if you like us, please tell one other person you think who would enjoy this podcast. And now for a little snippet of a podcast that we're really enjoying, and we hope you enjoy it too.
Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
They make the sound by vigorously rubbing their penis on their abdomen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Then at night, they come out and crawl around your face and mate with each other.
Oh.
But
Sorry,
get this.
I would like to sleep tonight. As naturalists, let's face it, we find something dead, we go and we poke it with a stick. I did that with the deer like 3 weeks ago.
As you do. Rachel, no. You weren't paying attention. Blood and mucus.
Oh, right. Sorry.
All right, this episode is going off the rails.
This is the quality content
absolutely.
people come here for. Strange by Nature podcast was chosen as one of the best science podcasts of 2021. Come join the fun wherever you find your podcasts.